Alright, so the next section we're going to cover is actually the ARP lead and the ARP bass. This only happens one time in the track, and it only happens right here from the transition from the beginning of the first verse into the actual dubsteppy section and then the rest of the song. So let's just take a quick listen, and I'll play it from here. This section right here, this is all Skrillex's stuff. All I did was add a couple of the vocal chops from different parts in the song here, but otherwise this is all his. We'll listen to it from the end of that going into the transition, and then we're going to break down these two tracks right here. So let's take a listen.
Please turn up the.
Okay, so you can see how it interacts with the track. Now let's break it down. We're going to start with the ARP lead. Now what I have going on here is two different tracks. Okay, let's listen to them individually, and then we'll listen to them together and we'll talk about it. Now this one here, it's going to fade up into it, so I did a low-pass filter sweep. And so you get the idea. I made it with FM8. Okay, and it has its different, settings here. I'm not going to go into breaking down the sounds or anything like that, but I will say that for, leads, pads, anything, growls, Skrillex I know uses this for his bass growls. It's really awesome because of this pitch feature here. I'm not using it in this particular sound because I'm not doing a growl, but we will take a look at it in other sounds that I did use in the song to give it that good, solid growl. But again, I'm not going to be doing tutorials and other, or at least explanations of how I get the sounds in this tutorial, but in future tutorials I do hope to do so. So anyways, as you can see here, FM8, I have two FM8s here. One of them is the actual sound, and the other one is more of the it's more of the mid lows of the sound. I don't want to get too crazy with it, but it's EQ'd a little bit differently inside the synthesizer. It's also pitched down a little bit too. So they complement each other nice. So if we take a look at what's actually happening here, we have a little bit of compression. Actually, yeah, compression, and then we have a sidechain. I know it's not assigned now because I unassigned it for when I did the bounce, because I did the assigning actually in the master. But what I did do is I had the snare here just so that it would really punch through and it wouldn't, conflict with this instrument. So if you take the snare or the kick group and the snare group as well and you play it, it should still shine through pretty well. So as you can see there, it allowed the kick to really, punch through. The snare was coming through here too as well, but I wanted to do the final side chaining actually for the snare in the studio for this instrument. Moving on, I did add an EQ. Okay, I'm cutting out the lows because that's where the bass arpeggiator is going to sit, and so I want to make sure I had enough room for that there. I did give it a little boost in the highs because this is a higher sounding instrument, and I want to make sure that it was crisp on top. Add a little bit distortion with the Camel Crusher. I believe this is a free plugin, and you can check that out online. It's a great little tool to add just a little distortion. There's some modulation happening here on the cutoff, which I'm not going to get into in this tutorial, but yeah, you might want to check that out. Let's move on to the second sound in the arp lead. Now this is interesting. I use resampling a lot, and when I was first making the sound, it wasn't this sound, it was something else, and you'll hear it in here. And so I wanted to sample that so that I could have it play through, and then I actually layered this sound and EQ'd it a little bit differently on top. So let's take a quick listen to this. And so as you can see, it actually, there's a little, cross-fading action here from the beginning sound into the arpeggiator, in which I resampled together the two of them and made this one so that we can have, one nice sounding, lead section. Let's hear these two together. Okay, let's move on to the bass, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. I decided to use Trillion for my low sub. They have a really nice sounding bass in there. It's called the Clicky Sub 101. I take the click out of it, and it sounds pretty good. Let's take a quick listen. Of course, for those of you that are listening to this on headphones, you probably won't be able to hear this unless they're nice headphones. If you're listening to it on your computer speakers and it's just coming out of, what's in your laptop, it probably won't come out as well. But what it's doing, and you can kind of see it here, is it's filling up this low end of the spectrum of the equalizer here, in place of where it's missing here. And we could take a quick look at that. See, I'm leaving room for it, so now when you play the two of them together, again, if you don't have the proper speaker setup, this won't sound, you won't hear the low end, but you'll get the idea. So if you do have a speaker system, you can hear the adjustment and the changes when I did, when I did mute the instrument track for the bass, and it's just supplying a little bit of low end, and all it is a copy of this here. It's just a copy of the lead, and I just made it a sub. So you could do it with a ton of different synthesizers. I use Operate all the time. I'll use FM8, or usually, for the most part, I actually will use the actual synth. So there would have been a third one here, and I would have changed the settings in FM8 to have a subtone, but I would have kept all the modulation and stuff that was going on. In this case, it wasn't a really big deal, and I liked the way it sounded better this way using Trillion, and so I went with that. But again, if you do notice, I am side chaining the kick and what was once the snare here, and that helps the song. It just helps the drums pierce through the song a lot better. So if I get enough requests, I will do one on side chaining, but it's a pretty simple procedure. There's probably thousands of videos online regarding how to do side chaining, but it really helps, especially in dubstep. You want to make sure that your kick is, slamming through, and your snare is just, hitting your audience right in the chest so that it gets a good punch. So those are some things to consider. Moving on to the growl group.